You pack your lunch every day. You cut your own hair at home. You drive 22 minutes past the nearest grocery store to save 9 cents per gallon on gas. You haven't bought a new pair of shoes in 2 years. You share passwords for 4 different streaming services. You feel like you're doing everything right. You're following every piece of money-saving advice the internet has ever handed you. So why does your bank account still look the same? I spent 2 years in that exact cycle, clipping coupons, buying the absolute cheapest version of everything, spending Sunday afternoons driving between 3 different stores to save $14. I felt responsible. I felt disciplined. I also felt broke constantly because the number in my savings account barely moved despite all the effort I was putting in. It wasn't until I sat down and actually looked at the math that I realized something uncomfortable. Half of the money-saving habits I'd built were quietly making me poorer. They weren't saving me money. They were costing me money in ways I couldn't see because I was too focused on the price tag in front of me to notice the damage happening behind it. That's what we're going to talk about today. 12 money-saving tips that sound smart, feel responsible, and are slowly bleeding your finances dry. Some of these are things you're probably doing right now. A couple of them are going to make you defensive because they feel so obviously correct that questioning them sounds crazy. But the math doesn't care about feelings, and the math on these 12 habits is brutal. Let's get into it. Always buying the cheapest option. This is the foundational mistake, the one that everything else builds on. You need new work shoes. There's a pair for $39 and a pair for $120. The $39 pair feels like the obvious win. You saved $81. Except the $39 shoes fall apart in 4 months. The sole separates. The stitching unravels. You buy another pair. 4 months later, same thing. In a single year, you've bought 3 pairs of cheap shoes for a total of $117, and you're about to need a fourth. The person who bought the $120 pair is still wearing them comfortably 12 months later. They'll get another year out of them at least. Their annual cost is $60. Yours is $156 and climbing. Terry Pratchett called this the Boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness, and it applies to virtually every purchase you make. Cheap tires that need replacing twice as often. Cheap cookware that warps and needs replacement every 2 years. Cheap furniture that breaks and gets hauled to the curb. Cheap electronics that malfunction outside the return window. According to Deloitte's 2026 Global Outlook, nearly half of all consumers are actively seeking value, including 35% of higher-income households. But here's what they found underneath that headline. Consumers who define value as lowest price waste more money over time than consumers who define value as lowest cost per use. Cost per use is the metric that actually determines whether something saves you money. A $100 jacket worn 200 times costs 50 cents per wear. A $30 jacket worn 15 times before it pills and loses its shape costs $2 per wear. The expensive jacket is 4 times cheaper in practice. The escape isn't buying luxury everything. It's asking one question before every purchase. How many times will I use this? And what's the real cost per use? That single reframe eliminates most of the false savings that cheap buying creates. Obsessive couponing as a financial strategy. I know this one is going to get pushback because couponing has an almost religious following in certain personal finance circles. Let me be specific about what I mean. Using a coupon for something you were already going to buy is smart. Buying something you weren't going to buy because you have a coupon for it is a net loss disguised as a savings. A 2025 Lending Tree study on bulk buying found that only 24% of bulk shoppers say they never waste the products they buy. 38% admit they often or occasionally throw away bulk purchases. Among Gen Z and parents with young children, that waste rate climbs to 51%. Ohio State researchers documented something even more revealing. Consumers who clip more coupons and buy cheaper brands are actually wasting more food than those who don't. The couponing drives overbuying. The overbuying drives waste. The waste erases the savings. The average American household throws away nearly a third of the food it buys, according to a 2025 analysis. That translates to roughly $1,500 per year in groceries that go straight into the trash. If your couponing habit saves you $40 a week but causes you to buy $30 worth of food you never eat, your actual savings is $10, minus the 3 hours you spent finding, clipping, organizing, and planning around those coupons. At that math, you're earning $3.33 per hour for your couponing labor. The federal minimum wage pays more than that. The escape is to use coupons only for items already on your shopping list and to track food waste for a single month. Weigh or estimate everything you throw away. The number will shock you, and it will permanently change how you think about savings that come attached to things you didn't need. Driving across town for cheaper gas. This habit is so widespread that gas station apps have built entire business models around it. You drive 12 minutes past a closer station to save 9 cents per gallon. On a 14-gallon fill-up, you saved $1.26. The round-trip detour added 6 miles to your drive. At the IRS standard mileage rate of 70 cents per mile in 2026, those 6 miles cost $4.20 in vehicle operating costs. You spent $4.20 to save $1.26. You lost $2.94 and 24 minutes of your life. This math applies to every drive farther to save a little decision you make. Driving to a cheaper grocery store. Driving to a warehouse club 30 minutes away. Driving to an outlet mall. The savings on the product have to exceed the cost of reaching the product, and that cost includes gas, wear on your vehicle, and the value of your time. Most people never run this calculation because the savings feel tangible and the costs feel invisible. Refusing to spend money on tools that save time. You wash every dish by hand because running the dishwasher wastes water and electricity. You spend 45 minutes every Saturday mowing a lawn you could pay someone $50 to handle. You do your own taxes using free software that takes 11 hours instead of paying a CPA $250 for a 2-hour session that might find deductions you'd miss. Time has a dollar value. If you earn $60,000 a year and work roughly 2,000 hours, your time is worth $30 per hour. Every hour you spend doing something you could pay someone less than $30 to do is a net loss. The 11 hours you spend on your taxes have a time cost of $330. If the CPA charges $250 and finds even one additional deduction, you've come out ahead on both time and money. This isn't about outsourcing your entire life. It's about being honest about which tasks you're doing yourself out of genuine preference and which you're doing because spending money on convenience feels wasteful. Sometimes the most wasteful thing you can do is spend 3 hours saving $20. Keeping a savings account as your only wealth-building strategy. This is the money-saving tip that sounds the most responsible and does the most long-term damage. You diligently transfer money into a savings account every month. You watch the balance grow. You feel good about it. You're saving. That's what responsible adults do, right? As of early 2026, the average savings account interest rate in the United States is 0.39%, according to the FDIC. High-yield savings accounts offer better rates, roughly 4 to 5% right now, but even those are barely keeping pace with inflation after taxes. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that consumer prices rose 2.4% from February 2025 to February 2026. If your savings account earns 0.39% and inflation runs at 2.4%, your money is losing roughly 2% of its purchasing power every single year. $10,000 in a standard savings account today will buy you approximately $9,800 worth of stuff next year. In a decade, it buys you roughly $8,200 worth. Your money is shrinking while itself sits there looking like it's growing. An emergency fund in a high-yield savings account is essential. 3 to 6 months of expenses, liquid and accessible. That's smart. Beyond that, every dollar sitting in a savings account instead of being invested is a dollar actively losing value. The S&P 500 has returned an average of roughly 10% annually over the long term. Even after adjusting for inflation, that's approximately 7% real growth. Money invested in a diversified index fund doubles roughly every 10 years. Money in a savings account at current rates takes about 180 years to double. The difference between these two vehicles over a 30-year period on $10,000 is staggering. In the index fund, it becomes roughly $76,000. In the savings account, it becomes roughly $11,200, which after inflation is worth less than you started with in real terms. The escape is to maintain your emergency fund in a high-yield savings account and invest everything beyond that in a diversified, low-cost index fund. Every month, your savings sit in a standard account earning 0.39%. Inflation is eating them alive. Buying in bulk without tracking what you actually use. Costco is a temple. I get it. The per-unit prices are genuinely lower on most items. The problem isn't the per-unit math. The problem is that the per-unit math only holds if you consume every unit. A 5-pound bag of spinach costs less per ounce than a 1-pound bag. But if your household eats 1.5 pounds before the rest turns to green slime in the back of the fridge, you didn't save money. You spent more on spinach and got less spinach. The Lending Tree bulk buying study found that while bulk purchases save an average of 27% per unit compared to standard sizes, 76% of bulk buyers admit to wasting at least some of what they buy. Among younger shoppers and families with kids, over half regularly throw away bulk items before using them. If you waste even 20% of a bulk purchase, the 27% per unit savings drops to a 7% effective savings. Waste 30%, and you're paying more than the non-bulk price. This is especially destructive with perishable food, which is exactly what most people buy at warehouse clubs. Produce, dairy, bread, meat. The USDA projects that grocery prices will rise another 3% in 2026, so the instinct to buy more for less is strong. But Americans already throw away about a third of the food they purchase. Buying more food at a lower unit cost doesn't help you if the total waste increases. The escape is to buy in bulk only for non-perishable items you use at a predictable, consistent rate. Toilet paper, dish soap, trash bags, rice, canned goods. For perishables, buy only what you'll consume within their shelf life, even if the per-unit price is higher. A smaller quantity fully consumed is always cheaper than a larger quantity partially wasted. Skipping preventive maintenance to save money. Your car is due for an oil change. It's going to cost $55. You push it off another 2,000 miles, then another 3,000. The engine starts burning oil. A seal dries out because the old oil degraded. 6 months later, you're looking at a $1,400 repair that would have been prevented by a $55 maintenance visit. You didn't save $55. You incurred a $1,345 loss. The same logic applies to dental cleanings, annual physicals, home HVAC servicing, gutter cleaning, and tire rotations. Preventive maintenance exists because it's cheaper than corrective repair. Every single time. A $100 dental cleaning prevents a $2,000 root canal. A $90 HVAC tune-up prevents a $4,000 compressor replacement. A $30 tire rotation prevents $800 in premature tire replacement plus potential alignment damage. The math is never close. This is not financial advice, but the data on preventive versus reactive spending across healthcare, automotive, and home maintenance consistently shows a 3-to-1 to 10-to-1 cost ratio. Every dollar spent on prevention saves $3 to $10 in repair. The people who save by skipping maintenance are building a debt of deferred costs that compounds just as reliably as interest, except it compounds against them all at once when the failure finally happens. Only paying in cash to control spending. The cash envelope system has its place. For people struggling with compulsive spending, the physical limitation of cash can be genuinely helpful. But for the average person, paying exclusively in cash comes with significant hidden costs. You forego credit card rewards, which, for a responsible user who pays their balance in full every month, can return 1.5 to 5% on every purchase. On annual household spending of $60,000, That's $900 to $3,000 a year in cashback, travel points, or statement credits. Just gone. Voluntarily surrendered. You also lose purchase protection, extended warranties, fraud protection, and the ability to dispute charges. If you buy a defective appliance with cash, you have no recourse. If you buy it with a credit card and the retailer won't make it right, you can file a chargeback. Cash offers none of this. The real risk of credit cards is carrying a balance. At 22% APR, a revolving balance is catastrophic. But a credit card paid in full every month costs you nothing in interest and earns you hundreds or thousands in annual rewards. Using cash exclusively to avoid the temptation of overspending is like refusing to own a kitchen knife because you might cut yourself. The tool isn't the problem. The behavior around the tool is the problem. Fix the behavior and the tool becomes an asset. Making minimum payments on debt while hoarding cash in savings. This one is sneaky because it feels psychologically safe. You have $6,000 in credit card debt at 22% APR and $8,000 in a savings account earning 4.5%. You make the minimum payment on the card and feel secure because you have savings. Except the math on this is violent. Your credit card is costing you roughly $1,320 a year in interest. Your savings account is earning you roughly $360. The net cost of this arrangement is $960 per year. You're paying $960 annually for the emotional comfort of seeing a savings balance. If you used $4,000 of that savings to pay down the credit card to $2,000, you'd cut your annual interest cost to roughly $448. You'd still have $4,000 in savings for emergencies. Your net position improves by roughly $512 immediately, and the remaining debt is paid off years faster because the balance is smaller and more of each payment goes to principal. Keeping savings while carrying high-interest debt is like filling a bathtub while the drain is open. The water coming in is real. The water going out is faster. The escape has one exception. Maintain enough liquid savings to cover genuine emergencies, roughly 1 to 2 months of essential expenses, while aggressively paying down any debt with an interest rate above 7 or 8%. Once the high-interest debt is gone, rebuild the full emergency fund. The order matters because the math is not symmetric. Debt interest compounds against you faster than savings interest compounds for you. Refusing to invest because the market is too risky. This isn't a money-saving tip in the traditional sense, but it's a money-saving mindset that costs Americans more than almost anything else on this list. Fear of market volatility keeps millions of people sitting on cash or in savings accounts that are losing purchasing power every year. The S&P 500 has experienced a negative annual return roughly 26% of the time historically. But over any rolling 20-year period in its history, it has never produced a negative total return. Over 30-year periods, the worst annualized return was still roughly 8%. Sitting out of the market to avoid a potential 20% decline means you also miss the recoveries, which historically happen faster and more forcefully than the declines. Missing the 10 best trading days in a 20-year period can cut your total return in half. Market timing, which is what waiting for the right time really means, requires you to be right twice. You have to exit before the drop and re-enter before the recovery. Professionals with billions in resources and decades of experience can't do this consistently. You cannot do it from your phone during lunch. The average American personal savings rate is roughly 4%. For most households, every dollar that stays in cash instead of being invested over their working lifetime represents roughly $4 to $7 of lost future wealth. A family that keeps $50,000 in savings accounts from age 30 to 65 instead of investing it in a diversified index fund gives up approximately $400,000 in growth. The safety of cash costs them a house. DIYing everything, including things you're bad at. You painted your own living room to save $400. It took 3 weekends, looks uneven, and you'll redo it in 2 years. You fixed your own plumbing to save $200. The fitting leaks. The water damage costs $800. You did your own car brakes to save $350. 6 months later, a grinding noise means you installed the pads incorrectly and now you need new rotors too. Total bill, $920. There is a meaningful difference between DIY projects you have the genuine skill and tools to execute well, and DIY projects you attempt because paying a professional feels extravagant. The first category saves real money. The second category creates costs that exceed what the professional would have charged, plus the additional cost of fixing the mistake, plus the value of the time you spent making it. The escape is an honest self-assessment. If you've done this specific task before and it went well, DIY it. If you're learning from a YouTube video and hoping for the best, get a quote from a professional and compare it to the realistic cost of getting it wrong. Include the cost of materials, your time, and the probability of needing a professional to fix your fix. For most people, on most tasks outside their core competency, the professional is cheaper than the mistake. Extreme frugality that costs you earning potential. You pack lunch every day to save $12, which is genuinely smart. But you also decline the team lunch that your boss organizes monthly because it costs $22. And at that lunch, your coworker mentioned an internal opening that pays $15,000 more than your current role. You skip the industry conference because the registration is $350. And at that conference, 3 people from your field were going to meet the person who would have referred them to their next job. You refuse to buy a $60 book on a skill that could increase your hourly rate by $15. Frugality becomes counterproductive when it prevents you from investing in your own earning capacity. Your income is the largest wealth-building asset you own. Over a 40-year career, the difference between earning $55,000 and $70,000, a gap that's often closed by a single skill upgrade, a single professional connection, or a single career move, is $600,000 in total lifetime earnings before investment returns. Spending a few hundred or even a few $1,000s per year on professional development, networking, industry knowledge, and career-adjacent opportunities is not an expense. It's the highest return investment available to most working adults. Canceling every subscription without evaluating the return. The average American spends $219 a month on subscriptions, much of which is wasteful. Auditing and cutting subscriptions you don't use is one of the best financial moves you can make. But the pendulum swings too far when people cancel everything in a purity-driven quest to have 0 recurring charges, including subscriptions that genuinely save money or generate value. A meal planning app at $9 a month that reduces your grocery waste by even 15% saves a family over $200 a month in avoided food waste. A fitness app at $15 a month that replaces a $60 gym membership you were already using saves $540 a year. A streaming service at $16 a month that replaces going to the movies twice a month saves over $300 a year in ticket and concession costs. The escape is to evaluate each subscription not by its cost, but by its return. What does this subscription save me or earn me relative to what I'd spend without it? Subscriptions with a positive ROI stay. Subscriptions you forgot existed get cut. The distinction between the two is everything. Now let me tell you the thread that ties all 12 of these together, because it's the same thread that runs through every financial mistake people make, whether they earn $38,000 or $300,000. Every single habit on this list is driven by the same root cause, a focus on the visible cost instead of the total cost. The visible cost is the number on the price tag. The total cost includes the price tag plus the waste, the replacement frequency, the time invested, the opportunity cost, the earning potential forfeited, the purchasing power lost to inflation, and the compounding that was sacrificed. The visible cost is what you see at the register. The total cost is what you see at 65 when you look at your retirement account and try to understand why decades of saving money didn't translate into having money. The shift from visible cost thinking to total cost thinking is, in my experience, the single most valuable mental upgrade in personal finance. It's the reason a family earning $80,000 can outsave a family earning $160,000. The first family buys quality items less frequently, invests the difference, avoids waste, values their time accurately, and lets their money compound in accounts that outpace inflation. The second family buys cheap, replaces often, hoards cash in savings accounts, spends weekends doing amateur home repair they'll need to redo, and feels virtuous about every coupon they clipped while their purchasing power quietly evaporated. Financial literacy is what makes total cost thinking possible. Once you understand how compound interest works, keeping money in a 0.39% savings account while inflation runs at 2.4% feels like watching your wallet leak. Once you understand cost per use, buying cheap shoes 3 times a year instead of quality shoes once feels like paying a tax on impatience. Once you understand opportunity cost, spending 11 hours on your own taxes instead of paying a professional $250 feels like volunteering to lose money. Once you understand how credit card rewards work, paying cash for everything feels like turning down a 1 to 5% raise on your entire spending. Financial literacy isn't about being good with numbers. It's about seeing the full picture instead of the cropped version. The cropped version shows you the price tag. The full picture shows you the lifetime cost. The cropped version says you're saving money. The full picture shows you whether you actually are. I spent years looking at the cropped version, feeling responsible, feeling disciplined, feeling broke. The moment I learned to see the full picture, everything changed. The same income, the same city, the same life, completely different results, because I finally understood that saving money and building wealth are not always the same thing. Sometimes the very habits you think are saving you are the ones keeping you exactly where you are. The price tag is the beginning of the conversation. The total cost is the answer.